long time ago, in a land far away, ancient people built vast temples and watched the sky. Saints walked the earth, and miracles were commonplace. Knights in shining armor battled for noble ideals, and bloodthirsty pirates roved the seas. The stuff of fairy tales? Not if you find yourself on the storybook island of Malta. In the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, just 58 miles southeast of Sicily and 143 north of Africa, sits Malta and her smaller sister islands, Gozo, Comino, and Filfla. Altogether, they are only 1/10 the size of Rhode Island and boast a population of less than 400,000. But more than 1 million visitors arrive each year. Some stay for a week, some for months, and some fall in love with this place of legends and forget to leave. Not unlike the first settlers who came to Malta more than 5,000 years ago. We know little about them, except through the tantalizing mysteries they left behind. Malta is the home of many megalithic sites, some as old as Stonehenge, others predating the pyramids. Hagar Kim is not the oldest, but it is a massive prehistoric temple carved from the soft, buttery limestone that is the heart of the island. A stone that grows so hard in the Mediterranean sun that monuments like this have survived for more than 4,000 years. The temple at Hagar Kim is a place of ghosts and shadows now, but sometime between 3000 and 2500 BC, it was a place of awe and worship, where the first Maltese begged mercy of the Great Earth Mother, and where their wise men may have tracked the stars in the night sky. From the hill at Hagar Kim, you can see the smallest island of Malta's group, tiny Filfla. Once used for bombing practice by the British after World War II, it's inhabited now only by wildlife, but it too reveals traces of the first Neolithic settlers who remained until about 2000 BC and then disappeared as suddenly as they came. No one knows why, but for a few hundred years, the islands were apparently left to the animals, birds, and fish. And then people began to come once more. An endless tide of people from all over the world and from different cultures. First, Bronze Age settlers who claimed the ancient temples for their own use. Then, Phoenician sailors seeking trade around the world. The roving Arabs claimed the islands next, until the Roman Empire arrived in the 3rd century BC. Determined to see that no enemy used the strategically sited island as the back door to Rome. But they unwittingly brought with them something that would change Malta and the world forever. In the 1st century AD, Christianity was little more than an annoying cult in some distant Roman outpost. It might have remained so, at least a little while longer, were it not for St. Paul. The Bible tells us he was shipwrecked here on his way to Rome to face trial and eventual execution. The site is still called St. Paul's Bay. For 3 months, Paul preached the new religion here, and not with great success. But in the end, he sowed a seed that would blossom to full flower. Today, Malta is staunchly Christian, mostly Roman Catholic, and everywhere you turn, there are churches. Over the years, competition arose between towns and villages for the finest architecture, the most beautiful artwork, the tallest spire, or the biggest dome. One of the oldest and simplest is the Shrine of St. Agatha in Rabat, just outside the city of Mdina, built on the site of early 1st century Christian catacombs. Fearing persecution, the faithful met here to worship and to bury their dead in secret passageways cut deep into the island's rock. But the most famous church is St. John's Co-Cathedral in Valletta. Built between 1573 and 1578 by the famed Knights of St. John. It's a masterpiece. A mix of Renaissance and Baroque style and taste. Filled with an overwhelming array of great works of art. Sculpture and religious artifacts. It's also the final resting place for many of the knights whose history is so entwined with that of Malta. The floor of the sanctuary is carpeted with the inlaid tombstones of knights from the 17th and 18th centuries, representing some of the noblest families in Europe. Founded during the Crusades, the Knights of St. John became famed as a military force. But they were originally a religious order whose mission was to serve the sick and the poor. A task they continue to this day, providing charity worldwide and assisting pilgrims, like those who visit Tapinu each year, a national shrine dedicated to the Virgin Mary. And a place of miracles. But the churches of Malta are more than repositories of the past. They're also the heart of the festa. Every saint of every town and church has his or her festival day when the faithful pay their respects. and the night brings fireworks, food, and fun. Today, the darkness brings the delights of festival. But long ago, the setting of the sun sent families scurrying for cover, and summer nights and endless tide brought terror to these shores. Pirates. The word sends chills down the spine, and well it should. The sea has always been a fickle friend to Malta, bringing fish and trade, and sometimes blood. For centuries, pirates from North Africa and southern Italy roved the Mediterranean openly, often seeking the safe haven of Malta's natural harbors. A small ship could hide almost anywhere along these shores. It was not gold the pirates sought, but slaves. Their favorite target was the smaller island of Gozo. In 1551, the dreaded pirate Rais Dragut took revenge on the Gozitans for the death of his brother 14 years earlier. Smashing their defenses, he took almost 6,000 souls captive. Men, women, and children, most of whom were bound for slave markets in Tripoli. The attack nearly wiped out the entire population of the island. From early on, the Knights of St. John had commanded every citizen of Gozo to spend the night within the walls of the old citadel. This is still the place to find ancient crafts, like lace making and metalwork. The citadel gives the impression of strength, but in reality, it was old even when Dragut attacked and offered little protection against ruthless invaders. Nonetheless, until 1637, the entire population was required to take refuge there, while a handful stood guard in the watchtowers that dot the coasts of both Malta and Gozo. Of course, piracy is often in the eyes of the beholder. The Knights of St. John were also master sailors, and along with Maltese privateers, they began to roam the Mediterranean like avenging angels. In later years, many a Muslim sailor found himself enslaved in the galleys of the order, if he survived the reckoning of the sword. The sea is still the heart of Malta. Fishing boats and skiffs line every harbor. Larger ships ply their trades, carrying all kinds of cargoes, or ferrying people between the islands. Ships of the world find a safe berth here, plus repair facilities large enough to handle all sizes and types. After all, the island has been home to some of the great navies of the world, including the French and English. The French Revolution brought Napoleon to these shores and forced the Knights of St. John to give up their beloved Malta. But the French were in turn dispossessed by the British, who acquired the island in 1802, and at first weren't sure what to do with it. They quickly discovered its value as a naval base. It was used through World War II and beyond. Like all the rest who came to these shores, the British left their own imprint on the island, including that curious habit of driving on the so-called wrong side of the road. Today, invaders are of a different sort, and they are welcome. Great yachts, some bigger than commercial ships, gather like migratory birds in these calm, protected, beautiful harbors. They come for many reasons, but especially for the breathtaking natural beauty, like the Azure Window off the coast of Gozo, a natural rock formation, although only a tiny boat can make the run through its arch. Or the Inland Sea, a hidden lake that appears to be inaccessible unless you know the secret of the passageway. Off Camino, the Blue Lagoon, where water the color of melted sapphires drifts over a white sand seabed. Or the hundreds of caves and grottos along the coastal cliffs. Where algae paints the rock a curious rainbow of color. Today, the pirates are long gone, but the treasures of Malta are intact. If you didn't find what you were seeking in her seacoast or her shrines, then perhaps it's hidden in the narrow, winding pathways of her towns. If it's castles you seek, then Mdina will serve. It's the oldest walled city, the Grande Dame of Malta. Step within its walls and step back in time. Called the Silent City, Mdina seems remarkably quiet, thanks in part to the lack of cars. Few are allowed, and they'd be little use. The streets are twisting and narrow, deliberately designed to confuse any enemy that found himself within the walls, and of course, to shield the residents from the wrath of the Mediterranean sun. Today, Mdina is a favorite with creative folk, artists and writers who love the sociable solitude. But it was first and foremost the home of Malta's oldest and finest families, even long before the Knights of St. John arrived. Snubbed by the Maltese nobility, the Knights first made their home in Birgu, renamed Vittorioso for its valor in the Great Siege of 1565. While Mdina lies inland, Birgu overlooks Grand Harbor, the natural place for the knights, those masters of the sea, to settle. Here they built their headquarters, Fort St. Angelo, upon the ruins of earlier fortifications. And just in time, for it was barely finished when the knights faced their greatest test. After centuries of battling their old enemies, the Ottoman Turks, the Knights of St. John awoke on the morning of May 18th to find themselves facing more than 200 Turkish ships filled with 40,000 Muslim troops. For 4 months, the Knights and their supporters withstood the invaders. But it was Fort St. Elmo on the other side of the harbor that took the brunt of the attack. Sworn to defend their faith to the death, many knights fulfilled that vow in hand-to-hand combat under 31 days of nearly continuous bombardment. In the end, the garrison at St. Elmo was wiped out. But they had bought precious time for the rest of the island and made the Turks regret they had ever come to Malta. Almost 400 years later, the Maltese showed the same courage under fire. As a British military base, Malta was blockaded and bombed unmercifully by Italy in World War II. They displayed such valor that Britain awarded the entire nation the coveted George Cross. Pressed into service once again, Fort St. Elmo and St. Angelo survived the onslaught. But other sites still bear the scars of the bombs. Following the Great Siege, the Knights began construction of a new, more fortified city called Valletta. It would become a masterpiece of Baroque style and architecture, and the capital of Malta. If you would walk where knights of old once did, then this is the city for you. Fort St. Elmo is located here, at the tip of the peninsula on which the city sits. Here too you'll find the great Sacra Infermaria, built by the Knights. Restored now after being nearly destroyed by bombing in World War II. Imagine, if you will, this hospital of the 16th and 17th century, organized to handle up to 900 beds, some filled with peasants and some with princes, all served equally by the Knights of St. John. In Valletta, you will also find the Grand Master's Palace, once the seat of power for the Order of St. John, and today the seat of the Republic of Malta. It's filled with the ghosts of the knights who once called this island home and defended it with their blood. But the knights are not forgotten. Many still live here, and you may chance to see them. For although their charitable work goes on around the world, they still meet in Malta to uphold their history and plan for the future. But even if you find no knight in shining armor on your trip to Malta, you will find other treasures. A wealth of ancient arts and crafts, and timeless trades. The incomparable beauty of the bright blue sea, and the smile of a friendly face. Place where legends still live and fairy tales just might come true.